Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. It is a true pleasure to have you with us in this space for learning, reflection, and collaboration. To begin, we want to acknowledge how meaningful it is to come together around a topic that touches so many families, educators, and professionals. Today's session is focused on learning practical strategies to better support children with ADHD, helping them thrive at home, in school, and in their home environments. We are specifically excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Maria José. She's a speech language pathologist, an audiologist by training, and someone deeply committed to supporting families and understanding and empowering neurodivergent children. Through her experience, she will guide us through practical tools, insights, and approaches that can make a real difference in how we support attention, regulation, and learning. With that, we'll have the opportunity to hear from her shortly and begin this important conversation together. Before Maria Jose begins sharing her story, I would like to briefly introduce our organizations. My name is Sandra Duarte. I'm an occupational therapist, and I am the founder and director of Missions for Love Beyond Borders. Missions for Love Beyond Borders is a nonprofit organization based in New York with global reach. It was created with the purpose of providing education and support to children, to families and professionals who work with neurodiverse individuals. Since 2018, we have collaborated with communities across the United States, in Latin America, specifically in Ecuador and Colombia, offering training, digital resources, and spaces of support for caregivers, educators, and therapists. We strongly believe that love, education, and collaboration know no borders, and that every family deserves access to the tools they need to help their children reach their full potential. Building on who we are and what we stand for, this belief guides everything we do. At Missions for Love Beyond Borders, we believe that when caregivers and professionals receive the right support, the entire environment around the child grows and flourishes. But Missions for Love Beyond Borders is a volunteer-driven organization, and just like our volunteers, partnerships with local communities and organizations are essential to our mission. This is why we are deeply grateful for our collaboration with Daytona College Ecuador and Avanti Parenting. Avanti Parenting contributes through evidence-based coaching presentations and bilingual educational resources designed to support caregivers in meaningful and practical ways. Together with Daytona College Ecuador, this partnership has allowed us to expand our impact. Last year, we certified 47 caregivers and professionals from 7 different countries, strengthening our shared commitment to education and support across borders. We are proud to continue building on this work and to keep planning events like this one that you are attending today or that you are watching today. Looking ahead, we are also preparing another free certification program this year, and we warmly invite you to follow us on social media channels to stay updated and be part of what's coming next. I will drop the link to our website and social media in the chat, and you will find us also by Googling our name, Missions for Love Beyond Borders, and you can also follow Avanti Parenting. Before we begin, I would like to briefly share some guidelines for the presentation so that we all can enjoy this space in the best possible way, making sure that our mics are closed to minimize the noise, and questions can be dropped in the chat, and at the end we will answer any questions that you may have. Now, without further ado, let's meet Maria José, our presenter and founder of Avanti Parenting. Welcome, Maria José. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be part of this beautiful mission of helping as much as families as we can. So yeah, thank you for having me. So a little bit about me before we start with the topic. I'm originally from Colombia. I am a speech and language pathologist and audiologist. And I work most of the time in Colombia. I also had some time working in New York in the early intervention program. And then I stopped working in my career, in my profession. I decided to stay home with my kids. I had two boys, beautiful brains, with so unique strengths, and that's when my process started to start guiding everything through a path of discovering more ways to support my kids, to understand why behaviors are happening, and I found myself reading a lot, attending to so many webinars and presentations, trying to learn many more things and strategies to support my kids. After COVID, I started working as a substitute teacher in the school district where I live. And that also gave me a little bit of the perspective from the school setting. So I had a little bit of the therapeutic side of the process, plus the mom perspective and also the school perspective. And I found myself talking about this topic with many families, friends, and then I decided to do this in more formal way, like not just casual talking, but also with a purpose of helping as much. And that's when I created Avanti Parenting, which is a coach. It's a coach service for families that has kids with ADHD. And I'm a licensed provider as well of two webinars that are owned by Cindy Goldrich. She's an amazing coach as well, and she's the owner of PTS Coach. So that's kind of a little bit about me, and I want also to reinforce the idea that for me, I'm convinced that no one is better prepared to support a child than their own parents. We love patience and the right tools, because it's not just love and it's not just patience, but the right tools. We parents are the exactly what our kids need. So if you are going through this, you are where you are supposed to be, and the kids have as a parent that they are supposed to have. All right, let's start. So with this presentation, my goal is that together we can explore how ADHD and organizational challenges affect your children's daily lives and the well-being of the entire family, because it's not just about the child, it's not about the struggles of just the child, but how these impact the whole family system. And with all of that, we want just to offer a compassionate and human perspective, because that's a good start to support our kids by knowing the roots of the situation, the condition, and that's how we can start. All right. I want just to be specific on the topics we are going to cover today. So we are going to talk about what is ADHD, understand exactly what is that, about diagnosis and treatment, about our role in this story as parents, about how we provide support while we are parenting these kids, how the family space should be taken in consideration, about seeking calm and harmony and at home. Also, and this is a big topic, is also having in mind what they feel and think, how the child is thinking and how he's feeling. with this whole situation and the struggles that he's going through, and even the diagnose, the label of ADHD. We also are going to talk about our allies in education, which is the school system, teachers and therapists, our network of trust. And with all of this, at the end, we want to make sure that we let go of what should be and enjoy what it is, because many times we as parents, we had some dreams, or we had so many expectations about what we wanted for our kids to be or to do. So if we are focused on what we have in front of us, that child, and not the ideal child, we are going to be able to understand more and be in a detective mode and know and learn a lot about our kid. And that's how we start knowing how we support them. All right. So first thing, we need to understand what ADHD is. So when we hear the term ADHD, I want you to give for a few seconds the time to think, when you hear ADHD, what comes to your mind? What are the things that comes to your mind? So we can hear parents saying that they are not doing enough effort, but it's not really lack of effort. It's a real thing. So the brain of a child with ADHD functions differently from birth. So this is not something that he's gonna get over time. The child is gonna be born with the condition, and and how it presents has a neurological base. So it's not about willingness. It's not that the child doesn't want to do things the way we expect. It's not that he wants to behave a specific way. So it's not a lack of effort. It's a condition how the brain functions. It runs in the family. So often the ADHD is inherited. It's a process similar to the eye color or the height. So if a child has it, it's likely that a relative does as well. It is very common. We are hearing way more of cases of kids that are diagnosed with ADHD. It's more than 10 out of every 100. They have the diagnosis. So I shared this little thing that is not that little. So you can feel that you are not alone. That even though we feel alone in the process because we are the one facing the struggles and the challenges, and there are many things that are impacted, and we feel isolated and alone, you are not alone. And the other thing that we want to make sure is that many adults are unaware. So I don't know if you heard about adults that grew up with ADHD, but they didn't know they had ADHD. So in this process, they suspected they had ADHD, but when their child is diagnosed is when everything gets a little bit clearer. So at that point, there are many, many adults who are diagnosed late in life, but that doesn't mean that these adults are too late in the process. They actually can still have the support and treatments like the kids. All right, so talking about the ADHD and the myth that this is something, there are families and parents that think that that's not a real thing. It's just that the kid wants to behave in an appropriate way, that he's lazy, or that she is a drama queen, or all those labels that sometimes we give our kids. But at this point, doctors, teachers, and psychologists worldwide agree that it's a different way in which the brain is wired. So it's a real thing, and there is not any longer the doubt. So it's not lack of discipline, it's not a result of bad parenting. but it's something that is real, and our kids they have this, and they are trying to go over the process without knowing what to do. And parents, most of the time, they don't know how to handle the situation. And that's why we are here. So we have 3 types of ADHD, the 3 types of presentations. So the first one is the inattentive type. It's formerly known as an ADD, attention deficit disorder. There is an hyperactive impulsive type, and this is kind of the more evident one, right? Because it's the kid that is very active. And there is the combined presentation. So it's when we kids having difficulty in focusing and staying on task, but they are also like very hyperactive in terms that they cannot sit still, they cannot stay in a position for a long time, they need to move. If you're interested in learn more about the presentations of ADHD, everything can be found in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, the DSM. So that's a resource that you can go in and learn more about the specifics of each type of ADHD. Okay, so how does the brain's control center work? So that's based on the executive functions. And these are a set of brain skills. And those are the ones who help us organize, plan, and direct our behavior, our skills, our resources to achieve a goal. It is the brain, and it's not how to plan and direct, but also stay on the task, stay on track until we finish and we get to the point we wanted. Is the brain, it is also sometimes the control center, which is the one that coordinates process such memory, attention, and language, so that we can make decisions, we can solve problems, and we can complete tasks, among other things. And the executive functions develop primarily in the prefrontal cortex, which is one of the last areas of the brain to mature. So for this reason, their development continues throughout childhood and adolescence. And I'm not really sure if you know, but typically reaching completion between the age 25 and 30 years old. So by having this in mind, we need to understand that sometimes we have false expectations or unrealistic expectations, and we think that our children needs to be doing some things, and we think that they are not okay on the process we are going through. But we need to remind ourselves that they are still in the process of maturing and developing the skills, because that area of the prefrontal cortex where all these skills are, it's the last thing to mature in the human being. All right, so we're gonna go over the executive functions. I'm not gonna go too deep in every single thing, because that would take really long time. It could take hours to go deep. That's something that I go deeper in webinars and other workshops. But I want you to have an idea of what are these. So we talk about that the mental control and self-regulation center, and it's often referred to as the CEO or the conductor of the brain. So that's where everything is coordinated and organized. So one of them is the initiation and activation. So that means that skill is what allows us or gives us the ability to begin a task without undue procrastination. So what does that mean? So it's that we have a task and we know that we have to do it, and we start right away. And that's a reality that in many people, in many kids, doesn't happen. So instead of initiating the task, they start wandering around And in that specific moment when they are supposed to be sitting down and start working, they remember they need to feed the dog or pet the dog. And then they start sitting down and getting ready, and they remember that they are hungry. So that kind of process, from the knowing that they need to do something to the actual point they activate and they initiate the task, it takes longer than it should. The other one is planning and organizing. So that is the skill of creating and prioritizing in order and structure. So this is a very, very important one, because that's what gives us the ability to know what task should go first and what task should go after, or the latest one, based on how hard they are, when it's the due date. And that planning and organizing is not just about schoolwork, but it's also about everything that happens in daily life. So, and this is one of the skills that we can notice in kids that are not that strong. Working memory is the next one. It's the ability to keep multiple bits of information in mind and apply them when you need it. So it's different from the short-term memory, which is the list of groceries that we need to get in the supermarket. And it's different from the long-term memory, which is that ability of remembering things from a long time ago. So I still remember the telephone number of my grandma when there were telephones, the regular one. So I still remember that telephone number, and that's the long-term memory. But this is a different one, and this is the one that keeps little pieces of information, and when they need it, they bring it back and they use them to complete the task. So an example is when a child or an adult needs to sit and complete a division, do a division. They learn that in some parts they need to do multiplication, and they need to do a subtraction, and all these tiny process to complete the division. Those are the tiny bits of information that we learn, and we're going to bring it together to be able to complete the division process. And that capacity of that ability is not an easy one, or we can see that it's a little bit weak in our kids with ADHD. The next one is the processing speed. The processing speed is the time it takes to process and respond. So as an example, we can see that, for example, in the school, in the classroom. So the teacher asks the children, pointing at the smart board or the whiteboard, what this shape, what's the name of this shape? And this is a very important part of the process, because I need to be very, very clear that ADHD doesn't have anything to do with being intelligent or not. Kids that have ADHD, there are so many that are brilliant, that their abilities and their intellectual skills are really high. But those skills for the executive functions are present. So sometimes it gets confused, and we may feel that our child doesn't know. But it's not about not knowing, it's not being able to process that information and give the answer in the right time. So when the teacher asks this question, most of the kids that doesn't have any condition like ADHD, you can see many kids raising their hands very quickly. And the kids that have processing speed, a slower one, it takes longer to respond, but they know the answer. So in the process of getting the information, processing, and giving the answer, there are so many different paths, and those are the paths that the brain takes in this specific child. So the child he knows the name, And he noticed the color of the shape that is in the board, and he remembers that that color is his favorite one. So by the time he's gonna give or she's gonna give the answer, the teacher is already in a different topic. So when we see that, and it's not just at school, it's also at home. For example, when a parent, a mom or a dad ask a question to the child, most of the time we expect the answer very quickly. Even if we are not in a rush, we expect an immediate response. So if we know that my specific child has a slower processing speed, what is recommended is that I ask the question and I wait. I give a little bit of a pause, giving the chance to my child to receive the information and be able to respond. And many, many times that happens. There are other moments that they were not paying attention, so we need to repeat the instruction. But this is something to have in mind when we have a child who has processing speed challenges. The next one is the flexible thinking. So this is the ability to take feedback and adapt. So this is an important one because we know that many times things doesn't go the way we thought or we planned. Or we thought that our job was well done and we think that it doesn't need anything to be changed. So when there is a feedback where the teacher or the parents provide the feedback and say, well, this is really good. What about changing this or that? Or this math problem didn't work the way you thought using this strategy. So what about another strategy? So that process of being flexible to find another option, it's hard for our kids. And this is something that is not just affecting in the classroom, the academic process, but it also affects our social interaction, because that's when we see kids that they want to play a specific game, but the rest of the kids, they don't want to. And the child gets extremely upset because he wants to play that game and nothing else. So that leads for the child to have a meltdown, a tantrum, getting very upset, instead of being flexible and maybe consider joining the group to play the game that everyone else is playing. Or trying to negotiate, like, let's play for 10 minutes this game and then we play this one. So that flexibility is really hard for our kids. The next one is the attention one, which is like the big one and the one that we hear most of the time. But these other things, it's something that we don't hear about when we talk about ADHD. We always think about attention and problems with the attention. And this is an interesting one because the kid who has ADHD has a difficulty in attention, but it's about sustaining focus in a task that is or challenging or boring for the child. It's not about paying attention to everything, because something that we can see in our kids is that when they are very interested in something, they have something called hyperfocus. So they can spend long times doing what they are interested in. But when they need to do something that it's hard, or they are not that interested on that specific activity, that's when the attention it becomes a challenge. And that's what we see in our school process when they are in the classroom learning things that they are not really into it, or at home when they need to do things that they don't like to. All right, the next one is the self-monitoring. And that's kind of using a self to monitor and regulate our own behaviors. And that leads us to modify or do or have certain actions. And this is something that is hard for these kids. So these kids sometimes, or most of the time, when they go inside the library, they are not able in that moment to notice his whole body language and the tone and volume of their voice, and they start talking like they are in the park. So that self-monitoring is something important for classrooms and when they are in the community, in the church. So that's something that it's a little bit challenging for these kids. And the last one is the emotional regulation. This is a big one, and it's the ability to managing frustration and modulating emotions. And this is a big one because our kids, they feel, and it's a real feeling, that things, even if they are tiny, they feel it like it's a humongous problem. So according to that, they have a humongous reaction. So in the process of helping our kids, when we notice that, through a little bit of a process of questions and asking to notice, we can lead them to see after the meltdown happens, not in the middle, because if they are very upset and dysregulated, there's no words that are coming inside their brain if you are trying to explain or reasoning with the child. It's when everything starts to calm down and the child is a little bit more regulated, when you can talk about what happened and say, well, this is what happened. Do you think it was a glitch, a small problem, or a really big one? And that's how we teach the kids to notice and start accommodating or regulating their emotions, or handling the emotions in a more appropriate way. I want you to notice that those skills that are in blue, those are the ones that are measurable. So those are the ones that a neuropsychologist or a psychiatrist or the one who is doing the evaluations of our kids, those are skills that they can have a number, like a score or value. The other ones are more in, you observe them, it's more about that. All right. So the other thing that we need to think about in ADHD is the iceberg. I don't know if you heard about the iceberg in ADHD, but if you notice in the picture, what we see, what is on the surface is what we see, right? So it's the child who is distracted, the child that is hyperactive, the child who is impulsive, disorganized, forgetful. That's what we see. But we don't see what we just talked about. We don't see and we don't notice unless we learn about those, about the functions, the executive function challenge, the emotional dysregulation, the sensory overload. So there are our kids, they are maybe more sensitive to certain stimulations, lights, sounds, the frustration, the anxiety. So we don't see those, but we see the tip of the iceberg. So we need to understand this concept or this idea that the roots or the base or the foundation of what we see is way more. And when we know about this, that's when we can start noticing, observing, and we can learn what of those skills my child is struggling more and in which ones we need to be more in focus or support more. These kids, they have a difference in the development of executive functions. And this delay can reach up to 30% compared with their peers. So that means that if I have a child who his chronological age is 10 years old, we need to have in mind that not in terms of intelligence, but in terms of the executive functioning skills, he may not be 10 years old, but he may be a 7-year-old boy. So when we have this in mind, then we need to adjust expectations. We need to adjust how we handle things, because that's what we have in front of us. The difficulties in the emotional and self-regulation, it's making it more challenging to manage frustration, right? To tolerate waiting or recover after a stressful situation. So that's when we see our kids having longer periods of time to recover after something happened that made them feel frustrated or anxious or stressed. So have we heard, or have we even think in our minds, or even express it openly, verbally? Can't just sit. Can you just sit still and pay attention? Those are thoughts that come to our mind. Those are things that sometimes we say it out loud. And the problem here is that no, he cannot or she cannot just sit still and pay attention. There are many, many situations where they need like being stimulated. And why is that? Because as we learn, the process of the brain development, it's a little bit delayed, but also the production of the hormone dopamine, which is the one who keeps us like stimulated enough to be able to continue saying tasks, complete things, it's reduced. So our kids they are seeking to continue to get that stimulation, to get that sensory input. So that's when it's hard for them to stay calm, but they need to stay active, they need to move, they need to think about different things, change of activity. And that's when it's something that it's kind of recent, we have it's called the fidgets. So those are tools like the ones that are in the presentation, and there are many, many ones, which they can be very helpful if they are used not as a primary element of focus, but it's like a secondary one. So there are kids that they need to move, because that sensory information, the sensory input of moving something, moving the feet, moving their arms in an appropriate way, it's what helps them staying focused on what the teacher is explaining. So we have those options to give to our child, and those are really great tools when the child can listen to the instructions while he has this sensory input. So there are things, I have some here, and there are some very appropriate because they are not loud, and it's just something that gives the movement and enough sensory input to the kid. There are things with some texture, and just having that tactile sensation helps kids to regulate somehow and helps them stay focused. There are others that are more loud, so you cannot use them in specific situations when everyone needs to be quiet, and we cannot do that because we can be disruptive and distract our friends in the classroom. So those are things that we can have in mind and use them if those are helpful. But if the child is not focused on what is happening and is switching his focus and his attention to the toy, that's what it becomes, a toy, not a tool. And it's not going to work. All right. Now, why does it seem like they don't care about time? That's kind of how we feel, right? And the reality is that for a child with ADHD, time isn't a clear line. It's like looking through a foggy window. And it's not about being defiant. It's not defiance. They aren't ignoring you and your instructions or the what is expected on purpose. But simply they don't feel the passage of time the ways we do. We are able to feel like the minutes are passing by and it's getting closer the time that we need to leave to go to school. That child doesn't feel the time that way. So that's why it's very, very important to make the time visually, like visible, like the examples that we have here. The typical clock with the numbers, or even the electronic one, the digital one, those are not clocks or tools that helps the child see the time passing by, like the sand one, or the time timer, which is the one that has the red area, and that's visually easy for the kid to see that as the minutes go by, the red area starts to getting smaller and smaller, so they can see that it's getting closer to the time where whatever they are doing needs to be get done and move on to something else. So we need to help them see how the time is passing by, because they cannot do it by themselves. All right. So the next point. So now we know what is ADHD and what we need to be focused, executive functioning skills. Now we need to be very, very to give a lot of importance. It's very important to have a correct diagnosis and treatment. So for this, we need to have an appropriate diagnosis. And what does this mean? This means that it has to be a correct one, because we need to rule out other issues like sleep, family situations, medical issues, something in the home environment that presents some symptoms or signs similar to the ones of ADHD. Something else that we need to have in mind for an appropriate diagnosis is who is the one who can make the diagnosis. So there are many instances, and I've heard about this, that the family comes and tells, yes, we had the appointment with the pediatrician, and the pediatrician gave me a checklist, like a questionnaire. And after I completed, she told me, or he told me, the doctor told me, yes, my child has ADHD, and that's it. There are many moments where the parents, the family, they don't have a guidance after hearing the diagnosis. But it's not just about that. Getting or being able to diagnose ADHD is not by just completing a checklist. It's not just about filling a form. A real, complete evaluation process takes 2 or 3 days in blocks of 2 or 3 hours, because the person who really knows about that uses different tests, and it takes really long time to be able to say, yes, this is ADHD, and it's not something else that it looks similar. So who can do this? So there are some pediatricians, but those pediatricians are like specialized or center on ADHD, psychiatrists, neuropsychologists. Those are the ones who are or have the skills, have the experience, and they really need to be really good at ADHD. They are specialists on ADHD. And what needs to be treated determine if it's just ADHD or there are other coexisting conditions. So ADHD in many moments or in many cases comes with something else, like a combination of 2 conditions. So we can find kids with ADHD and anxiety, or with depression or autism, So there are ADHD, and it's something else, making this like a combo, which it's important to know because that's what leads what treatment they are going to have. All right, so what is involved in the diagnosis? This is important as well. And that's when you notice that it's not just sitting in a doctor's office and filling a form. It must include observations in 2 or more settings. What does that mean? It's going and observing the child, for example, in math class, observing them in the home, observing them even inside the school. Observing the child in one subject can be very different from another one. So we need to observe the child in 2 or more settings to see how is his behavior. Have the full family history, because we know, as we learned, that this is hereditary. So it's important to know if there are relatives who has ADHD. Also, an ideal diagnosis involves also a neuropsych assessment. And that includes an evaluation of the education piece, and also sometimes the IQ information, the intelligence, and the social emotional assessments are included in this process. So as you see, it's a big one. It's a long process, and it takes days to be able to say and be sure that we have a child with ADHD. So at this point, we don't really need to be worried about the label, because that's kind of what sometimes we are doubtful. We don't want to go through accepting the diagnosis because my child's going to get the label and he's going to be treated in a different way. What we need to be focused is that, yes, he has ADHD. Yes, it's like a label, but having clear information about what my child is struggling with is what is going to open the doors for the support that the child needs. And there are moments where, without the diagnosis, they cannot access to the services or support at school. So we need to try to leave to the side the label and focus on the level of function of my kid, the executive function skills, the things that he's able to do, and the things that he needs support to. Great. Now, what does the treatment plan include? So we can have therapy. So these kids may need occupational therapy. They can need speech and language pathologist, psychology. The coaching is also important. There are moments where the coaching is helpful directly with the child, but these are really more in cases of young adults or teenagers after high school or the end of the high school, where these kids are aware of their challenges and they are motivated enough to seek for support, to learn strategies to help themselves going through whatever they need to do. But when they are younger, the coaching is more for families. So that's when parent education is very important. The coaching is most of the time more for the parents to learn how to manage or handle the different situations by understanding what is the root of the situation, what is the reason behind the behavior. There is also the medication. This is a topic that it's also a big one. There are many cases where after the diagnosis they have the prescription for the medication. And in some cases, the medication helps. In some others, the medication doesn't help. But being able to know if the medication helps takes time. Takes the time to try different medications, different doses, because you need to follow up and observe side effects. So that's something that we need to have in mind. But a child with ADHD who it's prescribed medication needs to have the support in therapy or coaching, because having the medication doesn't mean that by taking the medication, he's going to get the skill right away. So pills, they don't teach skills. So they still need to have the process of support and therapy and adjustments in the classroom and even in the home to help them through the process of their development and making stronger those skills, the functions, the executive function skills. All right. Now, which one is our role in this story? So first of all, when I say adopting a disability perspective, this can sound a little bit harsh, but it's not about looking at our kids like they are disabled. It's more looking at them with when I say disability perspective, is being more aware of that they have a different ability right now. It's so you adjust your expectations, you adjust and change somehow things around him for now. So you can start modifying or changing those expectations as he grows, as he develops, and as he matures, and he learns strategies with the support that he's going to receive at school and at home. Recognizing and valuing their strengths. And that's a big one, because we are easily catching the bad behaviors or the weaknesses that our kids have, the things that they don't do in a good way or in an appropriate way. But sometimes we just let the good things, the strengths, like flowing behind us. We don't notice them and we don't recognize them. So our role is noticing their strengths and how the good things that they know or they do can be potentially what motivates them to improve on the other things that are not as good as the other ones. We need to also try to see the world from their point of view, right? So it's just trying to pause for a second and imagine how a day looks like in your child's shoes. And it's how they are experiencing the world around them, where they need to follow expectations, rules, and they are reminded all the time when they are doing wrong, when they are behaving in an appropriate way. So we need to understand and try to be in their shoes. That way we can have a different perspective in a more empathetic and more nurturing way. It's being in a world that is not made for neurodivergence or kids with different neurological, or their brains is wired in a different way. And they still need to respond, they still need to perform like the other kids. Unconditional love, it's important, yes. But it's not the only one, right? And instead of trying to make the child fit into an ideal expectation, the challenge is to parent the child you have, not the one you imagine. And that's something that we mentioned before. All right, so now the ways to support in parenting. So patience is key, but it's not always enough. So being patient helps, but many parents also need tools and guidance to handle complex situations effectively. The behaviors that we see, we need to learn and have tools and strategies to make things better and not be the trigger or make things worse with the way we handle or our reactions. We also, another way is giving more love. but doesn't always solve the problem. So love is essential, but some challenges also require strategies, structure, and specific support. Logic alone doesn't always work. So and I mentioned this before, when a child is emotionally overwhelmed or is struggling with executive functions, in that moment, reasoning is not gonna work, because in their brain, when they are emotional, the frontal cortex, which is the one who allows us to think, to solve problems, is like it's turned off. And the emotional brain, let's call it that way, is taking over. So there are no reasons coming inside, and there's no way that the child is receiving that. It's just when they are calm. And we need to learn how to identify that and how to handle the conversation or the behavior, so they start calming down and regulate themselves as well. And the other thing is about the rigidity and strict rules. And radically, this tendency of having rigid and strict rules solve the underlying difficulties, because it's not about willingness, it's not lack of effort, it's about a neurological base in the way our kids or the skills in their brains are working in that moment. So what helps most is combining clear boundaries. Boundaries needs to be there. There's no way. And what I'm saying when I say that rigidity and strict rules, they don't really work that well, is not that the house, they don't have rules or they don't have boundaries, but they have to be a mix with clear boundaries, with some flexibility and understanding, and some strategies tailored to your child's needs. That's when the coaching and the therapy is very important, because it's not like a recipe that is going to work for everyone. It's going to be something adjusted and adapted to your specific child. And even in the same household where there are two kids with ADHD, some strategies are going to work with one of them, but with the other one, it's not going to work. So we need to find a way and learn what works with each of our child. All right. So the other topic is our family space. So the mind, if we had a little bit of if we imagine, after learning about the executive functions, right? If we can imagine how that is happening in their brains, the mind of many children with ADHD can feel disorganized and overwhelmed. So that's why they may have difficulty perceiving time, planning, and staying organized, right? So what we need to do is to create a calm environment with clear and consistent routines, help them feel more secure and focused. So we need to start by creating a good environment. Consistency, clear rules, clear routines, so the child knows what to expect. And that helps that brain to be a little bit more organized and less overwhelmed. They also need support in the moment while performing tasks, not just prior instructions. So it's like scaffolding. The child needs to have mom or dad sitting with them, working together on something, and as they practice over time, parent can be being absent a little bit more and more until the child is able to do things by himself. And that's what we do naturally and like without even thinking when we are raising our kids. There is a lot of support at the beginning, and that support is starting to fade away as our kid starts to learn and do it better and better and being independent. But we need to start with that. And remember that a 10-year-old child in executive function skills may be a 7-year-old. And the other thing that we need to have in mind is clear and predictable boundaries. And as I mentioned, those provide them with security. Even when they test them, they are going to try to push against the rules. They're going to try to fight about the boundaries that you are setting in your home. But inside their brain, having structure, having a routine, having clear expectations is what leads them to work on those organizations and work on that messy world where they live in a better way. Perfect. Now, we need to have in mind seeking calm and harmony at home. So, as we mentioned at the beginning, ADHD is not something that involves the child, but it affects or impacts everyone. So, our relationship with our partner can be affected because the stress can affect the harmony. So, a very important part of this process is that there is a good communication between mom and dad, or the person, the people who are in charge or taking care of the child. Because this is a very difficult process, and it's stressful, and it's frustrating even for us when the things after all you do are not working the way you expected. Also, the other children need attention too. So, how many times there is just one child in the house with ADHD, the other one, if there is a sibling, the child doesn't have ADHD, how many times we are more focused and things just work around that child who has ADHD because they need more support in the therapies and the coaching and this and that. And many times the sibling, he may feel displaced. So it's important to have that in mind. What is the experience of the sibling living in the house with a child with ADHD? So a really good thing to work on is having special time with each child. So it's dedicating individual moments to each of the child to strengthen connection and their self-esteem. So even if it's 10 minutes, have 10 minutes with each of their children, doing what they enjoy, what they like, without you intervening and organizing and trying to manipulate the situation, but just following the flow of the child. And that helps to create that connection that sometimes it gets weak and affects how the siblings feel inside that family system. Our self-care is important. So we as parents, we need to take care of ourselves so we can help and we can take care better of our family. So just remember what we should do, or the instructions when we travel in a plane, in case that we need the oxygen mask. What they say, that the first one who needs to put the mask on is you, and then you can help your child. The first reaction should be no, the first reaction that we may have is just to help right away the child. But we are not going to be able to do it if we are not taking care of ourselves. So that includes the way we eat, our nutrition, the exercise, and sleep, because those are the foundation that leads to have energy that we are going to need a lot, and be able to manage stress in a better way. We also need to take care of our emotional well-being, because we are strong. We love our kids with all our heart, but we also can be affected emotionally because of everything that is happening. So we need to be able to know that we need to be able to talk to others, to look for support, either for you as a mom or dad, or as a family system. So we need to be able to acknowledge and recognize when you need the support as well, so you can help your child. And the other one is maintain your friendships and interests. And this is something important, not just for your emotional well-being, right? Social emotional well-being, but also because you are showing your child that you do different things, and that's how kids learn to find balance in their lives. So it's not just about work, right? It's about work, and it's about to having interactions and connection with our friends. So we have time with friends, we have time for exercise, we have time for this and that. So that's a way that we can show our kids that we need to balance our day to day, so we can manage ourselves, right? Now, the topic of what they feel and think, that's a big one, and sometimes we don't even think about that. So what my child knows about ADHD and executive functions, so how much he knows about that, that's one of the questions that we need to ask. And it's important because understanding how their brain works is going to help them understand why some things are harder for them than the others. So one way to teach them is, I mean, depending of the age of the child, of course, but it's like showing the fist and saying, well, this part of the brain is the cortical frontex, is the one where the functioning skills are, is these areas, which one is the one that is going to help you make plans, solve problems, think, organize. And there is another part that it's more behind in the back, that is what we call emotional brain. So when we can explain that to them, and we explain that when they are feeling stressful, that when they are in stressful situations, when they are feeling overwhelmed, when they are upset, or they are having huge emotions, the emotional brain is like shutting down the cortical, the frontal, or the thinking brain. So when they start like visually imagining their brain, they understand why things are happening the way they are happening. We need to also have in mind that how they feel. They know about the diagnosis, they know that they have ADHD, but do we know how they feel about that? So it's important for them to talk about that, the emotions that comes with it. That way we can help them feel heard, validated, and less alone, which it's something that they feel and experience when they see that something is not okay with them, and he's or she's not able to do things like the rest. We need to have in mind personal care habits. So they struggle with sleeping well, so it's important to work around sleep routines or bedtime routines. We need to also learn and instruct or teach our kids about food and healthy habits, because even though there are things that are not connected with ADHD, definitely there are some things like a lot of sugar or artificial coloring that can increase some of the symptoms. They are not causing them, but they can be not helpful at all. So if we start teaching them about that, and we also learn about that, so we can start modifying, changing things at home. It's going to be helpful. And about exercise, because doing exercise helps them regulate their body, and it's going to be helpful, and it's going to improve the attention, the mood, and the learning. And that's when we remember that the dopamine in the brain is not produced the same way, and they need that sensory input more than the rest of the people without ADHD. So the exercise is giving them that sensory input. The other part is which one is their role in their treatment. So as they are growing, they are going to be able to tell us more about how they feel when they take a specific medicine, if they feel okay, right? If they feel some discomfort, if they feel like when they take the medication, they feel like they are able to focus more or understand more. And in that way, as they grow, they're going to be able to, at some point, handle their own treatment themselves without our intervention, right? The other one is, do they know how they learn best? And this is going to come over time. A little one is not going to know that. But as they grow, as their brain matures, as they have the support they need, they are going to learn what strategies works better for them. So as an example, I can say that I was very impressed and happy, actually, to hear when my son, who is now 13, said that he noticed that if he starts doing homework after 5:30, he feels like his brain is like foggy, like he cannot focus, he cannot concentrate. So it's harder for him to stay on the task and finish. And that was impressive, because that's what at some point we want to see in our kids, that they learn what works for them. So he knows that it's good to have like a little break after they come home from school, but there is a time frame where he can feel better to be able to do the homework. Do they know their rights, and can they express what they need? That's a big one. So when we teach them that they have rights, that they can have access to specific things because they have ADHD, and that goes along with the connection with schools and all the accommodations that can be done in the classroom and the options that he can have. When he learns about that he can have access to certain things and that he can speak up for themselves, it's gonna be very helpful, and it's key in their life, not just school performance, but in life, as we know. Do they recognize their talents and interests? So these kids are bombarded with so many negative comments and messages. So it's important for us and help them recognize what they are good at, what are their strengths, their passions. And that's going to help them going through their process in a more positive way. Now, the next one is our allies in education. And that brings up the topic of the school. So we need to have active participation in school. And it's up to us as well. Suggestions about that: don't go to school meetings alone. So if it's possible, bring someone with you to the meetings. Because when we are by ourselves, since we are emotionally involved and we have our concerns and we are stressed about things, sometimes we miss things that are said, that are talked, or topics that are treated in the conversation, and we miss that. So if we have someone else coming with us, that person can listen and take notes and also give support depending on how the things go. We can help the process by keep organized records. So, advice or suggestion, save every single report, emails, evaluation, meeting notes, everything in your child folder, because there are many times that you go through the process of checking and you notice the progress that your child has done, but also he may need that information later on. So it's good to have all those documents and in one place. Perfect. So we need to work as a team with the school. We need to collaborate with teachers, not against them. So we need to be able to have respectful and open communication to help find better solutions that are good for our child. And in this topic, it's hard because sometimes we are we act as an defensive or reactive way when we don't see that things are working in the classroom. But I'm going to invite you guys to think about what's the reality. So there are many teachers out there that they are doing the best they can with what they have. And many of the teachers, they don't have trainings. They don't have, they don't teach them the strategies. So they don't have all the tools to be able to manage the situation with each of the kids, each of the childs that are in her classroom. So, and it's not just my child, it's 20 kids in a classroom. And I'm sure that it's not just my child who has some difficulties and needs specific things. There are other kids as well. So if we are taking the lead and we work with the teacher to find better options for my child, it's going to be very helpful for the child, of course, but for the teacher as well. It's going to make things a little bit easier for her or him. Ensure the appropriate accommodations are in place. So we need to make sure that whatever is established after the meetings, and here in the United States, there are the IEPs, which are documents, or the 504. Those are legal documents that specify what adjustments or accommodations or modification a child needs in their learning process. We need to make sure that whatever is decided and it's in that document, it's actually happening. And include your child in these meetings. So when the child is older enough, having him being present, it can be helpful because sometimes we can get a lot of more information coming from him, and he can feel heard and he can feel part of the process. Now, the key message for parents is good academic performance does not rule out ADHD or the need for support. So there are many kids, they have ADHD, and in terms of academic performance, they do good. Maybe they are not A in everything, but they are doing good. But we have to remember that ADHD comes with many things that are supporting the academic performance, but also let's not forget about emotional regulation, self-monitoring, the processing speed, all of that is making the process harder for our kid. So even if he has a good performance, it's good to have some strategies, some changes, some accommodations for him to use so we can ease up or make the things a little bit less hard for our kids. And those needs to go hand with the child, because he's gonna let us know if that's something helpful for him or not. Perfect. Now, our trust network. So raising a child with ADHD or executive function difficulties is not a task that can be done alone. So it takes a whole community to help us raise this kid and help him grow and develop. So it includes family, school, professionals is fundamental in this community that is going to be around this child and this family. But we have to remember that I, as the parent, or dad as the parent, are the person who knows best your own child. And you are supposed to be the one who guides the process. So it's like you call yourself like the head coach who coordinates the support and the team surrounding your child. Because you know him or her best. So that communication, that looking for support, it starts with you as parent. And don't forget that even the coach needs support. So when we talk about our emotional healthy well-being, seeking information, resources, guidance, it's something that we as coaches needs to do, so we can have all the tools, all the strategies, all the skills to help our own child. All right. So make sure everyone is working together and informed to help achieve your common goal. Because what's our goal? It's raising a resilient and self-confident child. And we cannot do that alone. We can do this when we have a whole team working for the same goals. And I think that this is something that we need to hear sometimes. Being a parent isn't easy. And even less, I mean, if it's hard with kids that are what some people call neurotypical and they don't have ADHD, it's even less easy when we have kids with a neuro condition like ADHD or difficulties in planning, focus, or memory. So we need to recognize that and be gentle with ourselves, because this is hard. And we need to think about what we are doing. So questions like, I am truly supporting my child or just solving their problems for them? That's a good question that we need to ask all the time. Are we helping? Are we supporting? Or are we doing the job for them? What boundaries can I set that help them grow instead of feeling restrictive? What consequence will teach them important skills rather than just punishing them? So an example is like, and I'm gonna tell you, that happens to me more frequently than I really want. And there are many times where in the middle of the situation, after something that wasn't expected, and you announce the consequence, there are many times that you use the screen time as the consequence. But taking away the screen time, it may not be related with what happened or the behavior that the child had, and it's not going to teach them the skill that led to have that behavior, or that was the reason why something happened and it wasn't the appropriate one. So we need to think about the consequence are going to teach the skill that the child is lacking. Because that's how they learn. And the last one is what we talk, is letting go of what should be to enjoy what it is. So things to remember: you are the person who knows your child best. Trust your instincts and your inner voice. That's a big one. Your child also knows themselves and their experience is real to them. So having them participate in the process, listen to them so they can feel heard and included. Observe their talents, abilities, and passions, because that's going to help them maintain their confidence, motivation, and optimism, and it's going to help the process of improving the skills that are not as good as we expect. The challenges are real, and sometimes intelligence or potential alone are not enough. They can be brilliant, but that's not going to help the process of the lagging functioning skills. And support them so they receive the help they need on time. So the sooner you can provide the support, the better, because that's going to help them build up on things, strategies that work, that they don't work, and they can see the positive side of having the support. Now, I want to share this Wheel of Life in Parenting. This was created by Cindy Goldrich. And it's a way that we can track how things are in our home, in our situation with our kids. And it's how are we with the calm home, with the calm inside our home? How are we with the clear rules or expectations, effective consequence, parental consistency, connected relationships, effective communication styles? So if we look at that and we give a rate from 1 to 5 on the different things, then we can know what are the things that we need to be more focused on, work a little bit more. So maybe you know that you have clear rules and expectations. That's something that you feel confident that that's a strength in the process. But you know that maybe we are not that connected with the child. So that's something we need to work on. And with the other things. And you can use this wheel and add anything. You can change the topics and you can add the things that fits more to your family. And as a closing up the topic, and this is me sharing with you my own experience. Even though I was speech and language pathologist, even though I work as a substitute teacher, and I am a mom of 2 boys, sometimes we think that we know how to do things, but it's not like that. And my experience is that when I started the process of the coaching training, I was wondering why those things, it didn't occur to me. If those look so simple and in some way make sense, but you as a parent who are immersed of the whole journey, the chaos, the behavioral challenge, you are immersed, so it's not that easy to see, which is easier for someone who is outside and is looking the whole thing from above and is not necessarily involved emotionally like parents are. So that's why parent coaching is very important, because the coaches can help parents to understand how ADHD and executive functioning difficulties affect children in the way they learn, their motivation, behavior, and their daily life of the entire family. Sometimes families, parents, they don't know about those things. We can learn as parents, when we have coaching, learn to communicate in a way that children feel heard and can also be better. They can find a way to help understand and know how to say what we want to say and what worries us. Because the communication is a big part of that process of connection and understanding what is going on with our own kids. And we need to know how to handle the situation, how to engage in the conversation, how to introduce some topics. And it's not like, sometimes it's not how you do it spontaneously. You need to think about it. Coaches also helps to establish clear rules and boundaries, and also finding the consequence that truly are going to help the child to learn the skills that are weak or need to be reinforced or support. Helps to reduce stress, including the family routine, to achieve a calmer, more organized environment with greater emotional connection. And helps parents work together as a team with a shared vision, a clear plan or path to support our kids. There are many families where the mom thinks that this is a real thing and dad thinks that this is not. So coaching sometimes helps to get parents on the same page and work together for the same goal. And as coming to the end of the presentation, I want to share some additional resources. I have a workshop. It's 7 sessions, and in this we go deeper on everything. We go deeper on ADHD, executive functioning skills. We go deeper on the calm and the connection and how to get those two important things in the process, about communications, about consequences, about consistency. So it's a very, very complete, deep information that's with the connected families. Managing homework, it's another webinar that I do have to help how we can support our kids in the process of doing homework. But there are also resources like one-on-one parent coaching, and there are some books by Cindy Goldrich. Those are two really great books. The 8 Keys to Parenting Children with ADHD, it's more for parents, as the title says. The ADHD Executive Function and Behavioral Challenges in the Classroom, it's more for the classroom or the teachers, but there are a lot of good resources and strategies and tips that can be used at home as well. So here is information of the 7-session workshop series that I mentioned before. So session 1 is understanding your child supporting their growth, practical guide for families navigating ADHD and learning differences. Pause, connect, flourish, a family reset for ADHD and learning difference. Calm conversations, stronger connections. Solving together. The problem solving is a big part of this, where we stop being so imposing our thoughts and our the way we think things should go, instead of and switch to a more cooperative, all together find solutions to whatever is going on. Less chaos, more clarity, finding more clear boundaries, teaching responsibility, so that comes with a consequence, and growing strong thinkers. So how we can walk with our kids to what we want, which is getting them to be independent and confident on themselves and what they can do. And well, we are at the end. I would love to hear if there is any questions or comments. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Maria Jose, for this wonderful presentation. You share many insightful suggestions and practical ideas that I'm confident the caregivers and professionals will be able to start implementing today. As we begin to wrap up, I would like to invite all the participants to take a moment to reflect on what Maria Jose shared with us. Think about the information, the strategies, and the perspectives presented today. And if you had to choose only one aspect that stood out to you the most, what will be? You can put it in the chat. And more importantly, what is one thing you feel you can begin to implement on your own setting, whether it's at home or whether you're a clinician, a therapist, starting today? And kindly share with us in the chat. I also dropped a link to a survey to encourage you to kindly reflect on the presentation today, the content, and give us your perspective. There are very simple questions that are in that survey. We truly appreciate if you can please answer at your best and provide any suggestions, or if there is anything that stood out to you during this presentation and you feel that you would like to get more information, learn more about, this is the time for you to include it and to have your voice heard, because this space is for you. So please, I ask you to kindly complete that evaluation. And and if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and I can open the mic for you, or you can drop it in the chat, wherever you feel is more comfortable. We have a very small group, so it will be like more personal. But I am going to stop actually the presentation right now, so that, because I'm recording it, and in that way anybody can listen and go back and listen to the content and see if there is anything that you want to review again,